working in a team, and communication. Okay, in this, we're going to look at some of the concepts of inclusivity, refresher on diversity, collegial relationships, who the key players are, how to resolve conflict in the workplace, and what good communication actually looks like. So here's your KUDs, you know, understands, and do's. By the end of the lesson, you're going to know the communication cycle, and you're going to know what makes a successful team. You should understand the importance of diversity in the workplace and how important it is to effective teams. And you're going to complete part B of your assessment task, which is a reflection on your work placement. So that's going to be a combination of things around teamwork and communication, but also all the previous slides that we've been working on. Okay? So here you have it, collegial relationships. The underlying message here is that everyone works better when they feel valued and when they feel safe. That's a given. If you don't feel valued at work, you're less likely to put in 100%. If you don't feel safe at work, you're less likely to put in 100%. So we need to think then, what are the strategies that people could put in place to build these collegial relationships or these working relationships when they're at work? Well, the first thing is, as a manager or a team leader or as a mentor to a group of people, the first thing that you need to do is build trust. Let them know that they can trust you and that you trust them. It's a reciprocal relationship, that give and take relationship. One of the other important things that we've found in our experience is the team works better when the supervisor gets involved. They get their hands dirty in terms of getting in there and doing the work and working with their team. They don't just sit in an office and bark orders. Now, sometimes that is required, but every now and then you need to show your workers that you can do the work that you're expecting them to do and to show them how hard you work when you do it so that you can build them up to be working within the same expectations. The third thing is, okay, these are the top three that I can think of, is valuing everyone's individual efforts. It's about making sure that everyone and everything they are contributing is being understood, is being seen, and is being valued. People know the work that you're doing. When they know what work you're doing, you start to feel valued at work. Now, when we think about teamwork in constructions, there are three things I'm going to show you. One is what an effective team looks like, how you can get an effective team and what it benefits you, and some of the teams you might have on a job site. So let's get started. Effective teams have these things. They have good communication from the top down, from the manager down to the workers, and they have good communication when we're talking about the individual people in the team talking to one another. Effective teams have a range of skills. You can't just have 5 people that all have the exact same skill set. The best thing for a team is to have a range of different skill sets. Maybe someone that's really good at measuring and cutting your timber. Maybe someone that's really good at bracing framing. Maybe someone that's extremely good at putting up your drywall. Maybe someone that's really good at doing your stopping up and plastering of joints. Okay? A range of skills. Now, everyone has the same qualification, but maybe everyone has slightly different specializations or skill sets that they are extremely effective at. The third key thing here is making sure there are some common goals. Now, this is all about making sure that we have one group of people all working towards a single goal, common goal, all in the same direction. Now, generally speaking, let's say we're talking about the example of building a house. The common goal here is, okay, well, we need to get this house built on time, to good quality, in a safe way. But then we also need to break it down into those smaller goals, those task-based goals, so that everyone understands how their individual task that they are working on contributes to that larger end goal of building an effective, safe, good quality house on time. And that could be breaking things down by saying things like, as a team, we need to get all of our wall frames done by this date, then we have a common goal. To get us there, we're going to have you on the cutting process, we're going to have you on the framing process, we're going to have you on the bracing and erecting process, and we're going to have you on putting all the noggins in place. Okay? Maybe little jobs like that for a single task and how it's going to be achieved effectively. Because if you've got everyone running around all trying to do their own thing, the puzzle pieces don't always fit together in the end. And that then comes down to my final suggestion for an effective team, and that's strong leadership. The team leader or the manager of the site, depending how big the workplace that you're working in is, you need to have someone that is a good, strong leader, someone that values you, someone that respects your input, but also someone that is able to make the decisions to say, hey, let's get back to work. We're falling behind. This is what we need to do to get back on schedule. Okay? Someone that is able to be friendly, but still be your boss. Okay? 4 key characteristics of an effective team. Now, why do we want an effective team? Well, it's pretty obvious that if you have a team of people that work together well, they're going to be extremely productive, which means your processes are going to be achieved on time, maybe even ahead of time, and they're going to be done well. If you have an effective team where people like coming to work and they like working with the people they're working with and they like doing their jobs, then they're less likely to leave. So we're going to retain our workers, what we call retention. They're going to stick around for a lot longer, which means we get to keep all of our skills and all of our knowledge in our company. Now, if you've got 4 workers in your company and they've all been working for 1 year each, then you have a collective of 4 years experience. But if you have 4 workers and they've all been working for you for 10 years, you have a collective of 40 years experience. Okay, so when we talk about retention, it's really valuable to retain the knowledge and skills, because with the extra time on job sites, you've come across more scenarios and you understand the best way to solve each of the problems and each of the difficulties or variations that have been arising. It's also really good for morale. Now, if you've got a boss that is constantly yelling orders at you and doesn't make you feel good about yourself and doesn't value your input and doesn't get in there and do the work, then you're not going to feel good about work. When you don't feel good about work, you're less likely to work hard, but also you're more likely to be unsafe. Not on purpose, but naturally, you start being a little bit sloppy and a little bit careless, and it tends to characterize itself in unsafe workplace behaviors. One of the last things having effective team does is improves the quality of the work. If people enjoy doing their work and they are good at it and they are valued for it, the quality is always much better. Now, in a construction site, there are loads of different teams we could be talking about. We could be talking about a team of people that are responsible for safety. We might call them the work health safety team, and they will be led by the work health safety representative. We might be talking about the project management team. Okay, a team of people might be in charge of a major construction site, maybe renovating an entire shopping centre, for example. A team of project managers that are all working on their individual sections of the project, and they will be headed up by a main project manager. We might be talking about our teams in terms of the trades that we have, so the carpentry team, the plumbing team, the electrical team, concreting team, roofing team, painting team, etc., all of those different trades that we have out there. Or we could be talking about our teams in terms of the wall framing team, the flooring team, the painting team, okay, the roofing team. And not just trade-based, but the team of people based on the task that they're working on. So there's a whole heap of different ways that teams can be designed in a construction site. Now, when we're building these teams, think about our equal opportunity requirements, thinking about our anti-discrimination requirements, okay, Anti-Discrimination Act, 1978, okay, keeping that in mind. What do we need to do here? We need to make sure that we have a range of different people. People of different ages, people of different genders, religion, races, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, religions, languages, education, abilities. Now, we don't have to have all of these people. There's no requirement that we have all of them, but we need to be open to having them. And why would we want that? Well, there are a whole heap of benefits. When we have diversity, we have greater ability to solve problems in a faster manner because we've got a range of experiences from outside of a small circle. We have an increased circle. We have less people leaving because they feel more valued as individuals. Your company gets a better reputation when you have a range of different people. You have higher employee engagement, so people more working a little bit better at work because we have that diversity there and people feel safe. They don't feel threatened by their diversity. And we have a whole heap of different perspectives being brought to the table about how things are done differently based on their gender, culture, religion, race, age, etc. So, if they're all the teams, and that's why teams should work together, well, we also need to think about who are some of the other key people in construction that we need to be aware of. The first one is our suppliers. Suppliers play a really big role in us. These are the people, these are the companies that make or sell goods and services to us. I'm talking Bunnings, Home Hardware, Trade Depot, BlueScope Steel, Colorbond, Boral, Milwaukee, Paslow, DeWalt. These are all the different companies that either make or sell goods or services that we use in our construction industry. We can't do our job without these people. So it's important that we include them when we're thinking about the construction industry. It's important that we understand that one of the next areas I'm going to be speaking about is the communication cycle, that we don't just have good communication with our workers, but we have good communication with our suppliers and all of these other key players as well. Suppliers are also a useful fountain of knowledge. Okay? They obviously come in contact with a whole heap of trades. They're quite experienced there, and a lot of the time you've got tradespeople working in these companies as well. The second is government departments. Okay? Now, the government departments could be federal, they could be state, and there are a range of them that have an interest in the construction industry. They determine the policies, and they are involved with the promotion of the construction industry. They work in states and territories with the governments to ensure that we have a more efficient and a more competitive building and construction industry. They play a really key role here. Okay? Sort of in the background, they're not out there doing the construction work, but they're promoting the interests of the industry. One of the key things that the government departments have been working on in recent years is the adoption of the National Construction Code. Previously, there was a building code for each of the different states and territories. Some of them had similar ones. We now have this single national construction code that almost all states have now agreed on, which means everyone builds to the same standards in every state and territory in Australia. Okay? Now, one of the government departments there that we talk about in Australia that works specifically for the construction industry is the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. Okay? The Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. They are the government department that looks after us in the construction industry. Next, we have professional bodies. Professional bodies are really valuable because they give us information about our industry. They keep us up to date. They help us to exchange ideas. They promote our industry. And they also help small businesses get those key contacts with the big suppliers and the bigger businesses so that they can be effective as well. These professional bodies look out for all of the companies in the construction industry. Okay? We should be familiar with these. We've spoken about them earlier in our first set of slides here, and that was the Master Builders Association, the Housing Industry Association, okay? The MBA and the HIA. These are our professional bodies, and they help us promote our industry and exchange ideas. Lastly, we talk about research organisations and publications. Now, there are so many things changing in the construction industry. If you're out on the tools every day, doing your good work, you're probably also not reading through the internet, trolling journal articles to understand all the changes that are happening at legislative level and innovation level in the construction industry. To help you with that, there are research organisations and publications that help to keep us up to date. Some of those companies include Build Australia, the Roads and Infrastructure Team, Construction Engineering Association of Australia, and the Build IT. Now, Build IT is a magazine publication, comes out monthly, keeps you up to date with what's happening in the industry and a few different innovative products that you might be interested in. Same with Build Australia, Roads and Infrastructure, and Construction Engineering Australia. There are tons of them, depending on what specialty area you are working in. Now, we spoke about successful teams. Okay, we've now spoken about the individuals who might be in a team, the different types of teams we might have, and the key players that work alongside us in our pursuit of the construction industry and good quality construction. A successful company points people all in the same direction, because if we're working in different directions, it's often really difficult to get the work done. And you can see that in the case of the tug of war in the image I've got there. Everyone should be aligned, so we're all working in the same direction. And the benefit of that, okay, is that our work gets done more efficiently and it's more meaningful. It's important that we have that single goal because otherwise we're increasing the chances of conflict at work. Now, conflict is one of the leading causes of misunderstanding at work. Okay? Because of things like poor communication, people misunderstand things, and as a result of that, there's a bit of conflict that happens between workers of you didn't tell me this and I didn't tell you that, etc. Conflict at work needs to be resolved as effectively and as efficiently as possible. You need to resolve these issues so that everyone is able to work collegially with each other. So to do that, we need to focus on communicating appropriately as our first thing, and I've got some slides coming up on that. And second thing is thinking about our conflict resolution processes. What happens when something goes wrong and we can't solve it between ourselves? Who do we need to report that to? And what does that reporting process look like? And how do we solve the issue? In the first instance, I would recommend communicating with the person that you think you've got a little bit of conflict with, trying to resolve it yourself. If you can't resolve it, you speak to your supervisor and you ask your supervisor to mediate those issues. If your supervisor can't resolve it, you work your way up, and if you're in a big enough company, maybe you speak to the HR department, maybe you speak to the boss of the company. If you still can't resolve it, what processes exist for you? Well, you've got the opportunity, as we spoke about in our discrimination slides, to go to the Fair Work organisation, raise your issues there, particularly if you think that that conflict is a result of discrimination, bullying, harassment at work. Now, bullying at work is also listed in under the Health and Safety Act now, so as a result of that, you could also speak to your health and safety representative. But if it's just a little bit of conflict between two workers, the best thing to do is to speak with your supervisor and mediate and trying to resolve the issues by understanding what everyone has done or haven't done and just clearing the air on the miscommunication, okay? Because most of the time it's just a miscommunication. So, how does miscommunication happen? Well, you need to understand how communication works first. Communication works in a loop. If we consider that, I'm just going to turn my pointer on here, you've got the first person, okay, over here on the left, who is sending a message. They send the message across to this person over here who receives the message. Now, if there is something, we call it noise, in the way that interferes with this message, this person here might receive the wrong message. So we need to make sure that if there is some sort of noise or miscommunication, we need to give feedback. Okay? So this is where the loop happens. So it goes around like this. The receiver usually nods if they understand, and that's the feedback saying, yes, I understand what you're saying. Or they might have a confused look on their face, which is the feedback saying, I don't really understand. Or they might actually use their words to send a message back in the feedback saying, I don't understand, can you give me more information? And the communication cycle continues like this. Your communication could be happening via face-to-face, video call, video conference, speech, emails, letters, social media, wikis, texts, who knows? There are a whole heap of ways that you can communicate with people. And depending on how you communicate depends on what that noise actually looks like. Noise isn't just loud sounds when we're talking about communication. We're talking about anything that stops you from hearing the true message. So if you're on a construction site, absolutely, the noise of machinery can be the noise that's preventing you from understanding the message efficiently. But if you're sending an email, not using correct punctuation or grammar could actually be sending the incorrect message. It could also be if you've typed a text message in capitals. Now, there's no official rule on this, but it's sort of understood socially that capitals means yelling. So keeping in mind little nuances like that and how that impacts on the message that is being sent and therefore the message being received. You can't always display emotion or understand emotion in a written form. So sometimes the way that you have written an email isn't the way that you expect it to be read. Okay? So remembering that sometimes people misunderstand written communication because they don't have the tone of voice, they don't have the pauses or anything like that. So the benefit there is, if you've got miscommunication happening, you just need to have a chat and have a face-to-face and resolve your issues. Okay? This is why quite often the key source of communication between construction workers or between people in the industry is pick up the phone, give them a call, and have a chat to them. Okay? Remember that your verbal conversations are very informal. Okay? Your written communication usually a little bit more formal, and so you need to be very careful about how that happens. Now, let's talk about the types of communication then. We've got verbal communication. Verbal communication is where you're using your words, sounds, language, speech. it revolves around you being able to talk to small groups of people or individuals, but also your ability to communicate with large groups of people, whether you're speaking in public, whether you're speaking in private, okay? All of those sorts of things come under verbal communication. When we talk about non-verbal communication, we're talking about the other messages that are being sent to the person that you're speaking with. It could be things like the way your body is moving. It could be your hand gestures. It could be your facial expressions. It could be your eye contact. It could be how you're presenting yourself, okay, your actual appearance. But it can also be about how you're using your vocal cords in terms of the volume, the pitch, and the rate. I'll give you an example there that if I wanted you to really focus on something, I might pause and slow down what I'm saying. But if I'm really excited and I start speaking really fast, it's a little bit harder to understand, but you get that little bit of excitement in the message that's being sent. Likewise, in the pitch of voice that I use, if I speak in a really low, droning voice like this, not very interesting or exciting. And if I speak really high in pitch like this, then you start to see that I'm a little bit more excited about things, okay? It's the whole heap of things in the way that we speak that comes under the nonverbal communications. One of the biggest issues we have is around your facial expressions and eye contact during communication. Most young people, apprentices for example, students like yourself, are not very good with eye contact because you're not used to having those sorts of communications with people. Particularly now that we do a lot of stuff on our phones and computers, people tend to do a lot of communication with eye contact. But eye contact is so important in understanding and sending messages and showing someone that you are actually listening. Then we've got types of communications that are written. Obviously, you'd be familiar with emails, letters, text messages, etc. But think about things like memos that are being sent to workers, contracts, signage, reports. All of those sorts of things come under your written communication. Now, how do we make it effective? To be effective, we need to use a range of strategies that are specific to the people you are speaking to. So if I'm speaking to students, I tend to use an authoritative voice. I tend to pace it a little bit so people can understand what I'm saying, so I'm nice and clear in the words that I'm using. And sometimes I really need to think about what words I'm saying to make sure that my students are understanding it. Now, if I'm talking about words like efficiency, I assume that my audience understands it when they're in year 11 and year 12, but if I'm talking about that with year 7, I might need to break that down into some more plain English. It's also about the specific terminology that we use. If I'm talking about things like stringers, if I'm talking about studs, if I'm talking about noggins, if I'm talking about plates, they've got very different meanings in different scenarios. So you've got to think, who am I speaking to, and are they going to understand that language that I'm using? Am I getting the feedback from them? Are they listening actively, or am I listening actively? Now, active listening isn't just, doing star jumps while you listen. It's listening to what they're saying and providing feedback specific to it. Maybe it's asking questions to clarify, or maybe it's confirming, okay, so a stringer is the piece of timber that runs down the side of the stair. Excellent, that helps me understand. Giving that sort of feedback. So that there is the end of the communication slides. Hope that one's been really clear and helpful for you. I recommend you go back and refresh yourself on types of communications and how to do good communication. That sort of stuff comes up very regularly in the examination for the HC and for the trials. Okay? And at the end of today's lesson, you've got a short response to work on. So good luck.